Well, hello and welcome to I Love Gay today. And this truly is a special episode. And we are here with Doug Probst, aka Shawn Mayotte. How are you?
I am good today. How are you, Matt?
Oh, I'm great. I am overly excited to be connected. This is our first time actually meeting, at least virtually. We've chatted on
Right.
the phone, but yeah, you. How would I start that off? First, you got me back into reading books that I used to read all the time, and then all of a
That's
sudden
a
I just
huge
took a
compliment.
break from that, and I read your book, The Musings of a Narcissist, and I couldn't put it down. And you've brought the light back to me on reading.
Wow. That's a huge compliment. I really appreciate hearing that. Um, I've been told a lot worse, but not about this book. There you go, this book.
That book, that's it.
Right. This is it. Um, I did put my heart and soul into it, and one thing I am proud of it is that it is honest. I could not live with myself if I didn't get all that out.
Yeah.
All that out. So I'm
Well,
glad that it got you back into reading.
I think the main reason is, yeah, I was thinking about it just even a few minutes ago as I was kind of reading some of the other interviews that you have done. But I think it's the underlying piece. I mean, the part that folks don't know, you and I are about the same age, and we
Right.
grew up in the same kind of crappy part of LA. Because
Right.
having been from LA, and then you just take it all for granted. I moved, not only moved away, but also even when I would travel, people would always go like, "You're from LA," and they're always thinking glamour and Hollywood. And yours
Right.
was one of the first books that I had read that actually really depicted exactly kind of how it felt to live in parts of LA that are very gang infested and kind of like, I didn't feel bad living there, but they're definitely not that rosy Hollywood glamour that everybody thought.
Yeah, that's another compliment. I appreciate that because yeah, I mean, people outside of LA, I experienced the same thing in LA. Oh my God, Hollywood and all this stuff. And no, we didn't know any better because that's how we grew up. So that's what we saw.
Yeah.
But yeah, gang infested. Wilmington, Long Beach. I mean, I remember telling people in the '80s. I lived in Long Beach, and they knew that it was a gay city. They did know that, but they had no idea how huge a crime problem it had. And I would tell them and say, no, it's got beach in the name. It can't have it. And then, of course, the 90s come around and it got Snoop Dogg and Sublime, and now everybody knows. The
Yeah.
city's got its pocket. Yeah.
But your story that we'll talk about, you grew up there. You and I did not have the same, upbringing in that sense. I didn't suffer child abuse, and I didn't suffer a lot of the things you had. But I think the part that I realized that I connected with you the most on was just that it was that you had, we neither one of us had the rosiest of, you just kind of grow up the way you do, and
Right.
yet with everything you went through, you didn't really, you weren't whiny about it. You didn't blame everything, you didn't blame all those troubles on making you, like a person with disadvantages. You just simply dusted yourself off, and we both had our own ways of just persevering and getting through it. And I think overall, I mean, that probably was the part that I connected with you the most on.
That's what I had to do. You get thrown out on the streets at 17 after living 5 years in the LA County probation system. What else are you going to do? It's like I just, adapted to the circumstances. And also, I didn't, one thing I do appreciate is that I didn't become a cynic. It would have been easy to become a cynic about everything. But I love the Oscar Wilde quote, a cynic is a man who knows the price of everything but the value of nothing. And, having a child later and raising him, that's the worst thing you can, teach a child is to be cynical. And then, destroys dreams and all that. So yeah, I didn't become cynical. So I appreciate that compliment and understanding that for me, it was a no-brainer in a way. I had to survive. I was forced to survive, and drugs didn't interest me at that time. And I saw so much of death because I landed. We'll talk about that. The epicenter of AIDS was happening right there, and I'm on the street with my buddies who are hustling and prostituting, and they're succumbing to the coughs and all this stuff. And I don't know what's going on, but I do understand enough to know that I don't want to die because I'd already lived in a war zone for 5 years. And so now, but now it's about caretaking and caring for the sick and dying, all my friends. And these are guys that aren't even listed anywhere because we're talking about hustlers who were 17, 16 years old, dying in the bushes of Long Beach. So it was an interesting time. It was a great time to be alive and be
Yeah.
me because I was wanted by everybody. I was cute, but it was also a sad time because I saw so much death.
Yeah. Well, just as you had mentioned, segueing in, talking about hustlers in Long Beach in the 80s. And people think at first, especially because your face is iconic, anybody who's around my age, our age, and was gay anywhere in the country knew who saw your face and knew who you
Really?
were. It was
And
I'm making you blush.
Paying attention. I appreciate that. Yeah, I found out later, but yeah.
But they knew who you were. You're very visible because you did a lot of nude modeling. You've done a bit of porn, and you were a high class escort and hustler. And yet, people, I think, when they see this book and they even think, at the point of this interview, they're going to think the first thought is, oh, this is just going to be about a story about some guy who did porn and hustled, and that's it. And that's not the story, is it?
No. There's so many elements to this. My story. I wrote it as my life story, up to the age of 30 when Josh was 5 years old, my son. He was born when I was 24, 25. And the reason I wrote it was because it's not about one particular subject or being a porn actor or being this or that. It's about my life. It was about telling the truth, being honest. My family, they are all pieces of shit, except my sister now. My sister has come around but like you say, I don't see myself as a victim. I was a victim as a child. Yeah. But, as I got older, and saw and made the choices that I made, like you say, high class escort. Yes, I got into the upper leagues of the upper, and that happened right off the bat. I mean, it was like I got off the streets early. I mean, it was like I saw I met some good payers, and I stopped traffic walking down Ocean Boulevard. It was like all I had to do was adjust this, and then walk down Ocean Boulevard, and cars were practically crashing into each other. I was like, wow, this is cool. And then I'd make a deal, but that didn't last very long because I didn't want to spend like $35 a night, $8 a night for a motel like all the other guys were doing. I wanted to get an apartment, get my own place. And then one of my I met some people, John Movito, who I wrote a tribute to on the AIDS Memorial. He was known as Robbie Leonetti because of his likeness to Robbie Benson in the gay film, adult actor film, porno. I have to say porno world. He was very well known, and he took a brotherly role for me because I had no idea what to do, but I knew that I had something that people wanted, and at the same time, I had no problem with it. It wasn't like I was, because I also had a musical ability. That's the other half. I was living two double lives, but he introduced me to a magazine called The Advocate, and he said, put an ad in here, and you'll get stuff. So I wrote my ad, Long Beach Fox, 8 and a half uncut. I mean, cut. I was cut. I want to see that cut, and then and the calls I got off that ad, off the hook. It was like immediately I met surrogate fathers who were, extremely wealthy, like you read in the book. Hey, all here, all here, and they really saw something in me to where, we just go to dinner sometimes and experience friendship and made a lot of money. Yeah, they were very, very generous, but also very wealthy.
Yeah, no, you were in your book. You were bumping shoulders and hanging out with whether it's David Geffen or some of a lot of big names. But on the side note, it's the big name in the world of porn that you got to know is William Higgins, and that he was infamous even back then. I didn't know enough, but I knew that name.
Yeah, everybody knew it. Like I say, I will give Bill Higgins credit because he was a visionary, and he gave gay films, their start. It wasn't the first, but he knew how to, expand it worldwide. And reach a global audience by, picking us up, us lost boys who were on the streets, and giving them star names and helping them in that way. But as you know where I'm going to go with this, I also see him as a murderer, because he offered me many roles, but I was already seeing him deny my friends condoms when AIDS was killing them and they were dying, and he knew better than that. And I told him, hell no, I'm not gonna die for you just because you got basically an audience of, not the audience, but him, like the barbarians in the Roman Colosseum, go, 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 and then my friend dies. I mean, these are my friends, actual human beings, that he was using to sell films. And as well as I do, visionaries can be assholes. I mean, that's what it takes sometimes to be that way. But he hurt a lot of people. He did.
Yeah. But you also post the, past after the book, in the book, you talk a lot about, when you were kind of shoved off into Catholic boy homes, and but that really, not only did that impact your life at a young age, but that really carried forward into later on in life, where you were able to confront Cardinal Roger Mahony and really make a big difference in being one of the voices to help bring that down.
Wow, you hit upon thank you. You hit upon a great nexus there that I didn't even. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I was raped by Catholic priests, and a couple of them in Rancho San Antonio Boys Home in Chatsworth, California, and you're right. Instead of, in other words, I hated my father at the time, and instead of them coming at me and making me a good Catholic boy, I could have followed anything at the time because I was looking for a father. They turned me against religion because, they did that. And as you know, I tell it all in the book. As I try to put the person there in my shoes when I was being, sexually assaulted. But at the same time, you're right. It's a great link that you just made. Later, I was able to kind of lead the charge, thanks to Jeffrey Anderson, who got the California legislature to, open a window for us victims to sue the archdiocese for the abuse. And the interesting thing about Mahony, who was the cardinal of LA, the LA archdiocese, when I was picked to speak to him, because we're talking about 508 victims, and some of the victims they were seroconverted to HIV at 10 years old. I mean, this was some serious stuff. And one of the ladies had cut off her own arm at our SNAP meetings, and she'd walk around, and it was like there weren't many that were, they were really screwed up, and it screwed me up too. But I was able to at least be coherent enough to be, to speak to Mahoney, and they thought I could do well. And when I spoke to him, and I said, I said all the stuff that I said, even the Judge McCoy, the attorneys, they were crying. They were actually sitting there going, "My God!" And Mahoney was unmoved. I got to say, one of the most hollow, detached, men I've ever met in my life. Rivals my father, but he was saying, like, what can I do? I don't have the money. I said, sell the fucking cathedral. You could do that. And he goes, no, I don't think so. And I said, well, will you validate my parking? Just a joke. But then 3 days later, they did settle the case with us for $660 million. I'm not taking any credit for that. The reason I think 3 days later they did that was because our cases were so strong. Those boys' homes had all the records. They had evidence. Mine was one of the strongest cases. So, yeah. Anyway.
Well, maybe you were able to more strongly confront that because you had that. As you said, you compared him to your father, and what's interesting is that I think there is something else that carries forward into when we talk about what you're doing today, which is that, and I don't even know how aware you are of what somebody like myself reading your story would pick up, is that no matter how crappy your parents were, and you guys would you would stay like, I don't ever want to see them again, but you always found a way to forgive them, and you were always hoping that they were going to turn around, that they were going to turn a corner and become better people. And it's interesting, you carried that through the entire book, that you always hoped they were going to become better people.
That's true. And I found out they wouldn't. They didn't. yeah, I think it's just that little boy that never got what he wanted from either one, and you just keep hoping and hoping and hoping until you finally realize it ain't gonna happen, and you just have to accept it. And I accepted it. 5 years before my mother died, I cut off talking to her, because it was a constant asking for money and blah blah blah, and it was just, it was toxic. It was toxic. Like you say, I do forgive them, to a point. I mean, it's like they were so bad that they never really even acknowledged some of the, the pain they caused. But my sister recently got a hold of me, and she was like, I read your book, and I couldn't believe it because I thought she was still on the streets, from all the raping that my father did to her. And she said, she even sent me a couple of incidents that I must have blocked out. Yeah. And she said, I love mom, and I wish, I forgive her. And I said, you know what, as a counselor, forgiveness is a wonderful thing, when you're ready to forgive. In other words, I've had clients that say, I haven't forgiven enough. I still feel guilty. Well, don't worry about it. When you get there, you get there. Letting it go is a big deal.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think that's the best part of your story is where you're at today. And I mean, I think that's the culmination of the fact that, you and I and others in our age group, we've grown up, and exactly. And you've been able to turn things around to a point where now you are working for an organization where you're helping other people to get through similar things that you experienced during your lifetime.
I became a drug counselor, and I've worked for quite a few rehabs. I've moved from one to the other, and some of the stories that I hear from my caseload of clients, rival mine. I mean, I always think what I experienced was the worst, and it was really bad. But I've got clients that have been shot by their parents when they were 5. They smoked crack with them when they were little. That does rival mine. I mean, and when you're abused and at that level, I mean, I had one, I won't name it, I can't name it, but first thing she told me was, well, not first thing she told me. I learned, reading her file, that she was caught with a dead body in the trunk of her car, and I'm like, and that's okay, did you at least have registration? In other words, you got to start on a positive note. Yeah. And just develop trust. And because one thing that have been abused and have been betrayed so many times, I mean, betrayed, not just by my parents, but by the system, by the priest, by everybody, is that you don't trust anybody. And that's what I would tell them, is that you can trust me. I've been there. Don't violate that trust, and we'll get through this, and we'll get you through it. And some do, some don't.
Well, I think also you're probably able to help because it's in the secret is in the title of your book, is that you're obviously self-aware, and self-awareness, I think, all of us probably need to work on that and improve, is that you're self-aware and you're able to look at yourself and realize that you were a narcissist and be able to talk more freely about the things you went through and how it pertains to today based on things that most people can't really admit about themselves.
I really appreciate that, and that's a great compliment. I mean, because it's a daily process. I still have that, that ego that rises up, and my ego is not my amigo. It'll tell me things that are not true, and especially as I get older, and so I have to be aware of it. And self-examination, as you know, it's the most important thing that we can do in life. What was it Aristotle said? A life unexamined is not worth living. Yeah. So once I read some of those things, I knew, and being a counselor, you have to go through that. You have to be trained and self-examine. Otherwise, you can't transmit something you haven't got. Yeah. So thank you for that. I have to look inside myself, but it's a process. In other words, I can easily, my mind go right back to narcissism, but I realize, and I remember the consequences of my narcissism, of just thinking of myself. It's not a good outcome.
No, I hear you. And but most importantly, I just, like I said, the connection that I have felt with you, I'm really genuinely looking forward to my trip out to LA this year, where
Yeah.
I'm going to make I'm going to, you're right in the neighborhood I grew up, so it's easy. My whole family still lives down there. I'm going to come on down and hang out and visit.
You get to hang out and visit, go to lunch, dinner, whatever. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Tell me.
And may I point out that you're the only person also that's ever written and understood exactly the crappy little part of LA that I grew up, Wilmington, when you described it as the land of, I took the quote here, land of junkyards, and it makes Compton look like Newport Beach.
And you connected with it. I never thought, because nobody knows about Wilmington. They don't know about it. Yeah.
No, I grew up there, a big part of my childhood, and then I always say, unfortunately, before having to go to Banning High, I escaped and moved to San Pedro.
Right. Banning High. And Banning High was famous for what? The football players that would come out of there. Yeah, but the neighborhood, it's like, yeah. I'm glad you sent me that line. It made Compton look like Newport Beach. Yeah, it did. And
but when I was a kid, I didn't think it was so bad. So that's again what and it's all in how our character and how we process it and how we move forward and dust ourselves off. And I think that's what I admire the most about you, is that you're able to just persevere and get through it.
Thank you very much.
So yeah,
you did too. I mean, you got through Wilmington. That's not an easy place to grow up in. But San Pedro is better. You're right. San Pedro is better. In fact, we go down there. I take my little dog Archie to the beach, to Cabrillo.
I love it. Well, I really look forward to seeing you, and I'm really glad that you're able to take a few moments of your time and kind of share your story and some of the highlights with our audience here.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. And just to let people know, it's all a life story. And I thank you, Matt, for having me on and being able to tell a little bit about the story, my life story.
Well, it's wonderful to see you, and you take care now.
You too, Matt. Thank you.